So this is the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 380. Not the Bodyguard 2.0, because that's actually a great gun. This, on the other hand, is the worst gun in my collection. In fact, this is probably one of the worst guns ever made. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, why did you buy that gun if you hate it so much? Well, I actually didn't buy this gun. I won this gun at a coyote drive that I entered about 15 years ago. In fact, I don't even think I've shot this gun for over 10 years. So the question is, why am I showing you this pistol? Well, my friends over at Gideon Optics came out with this cool little green dot called the Pebble. And this is actually made to go on the Bodyguard 2.0. Well, I reached out to the guys over at Gideon Optics and told them that I came up with a stupid idea. In fact, I'm probably the only person dumb enough to do this, but after doing a little research, I found out that the rear sight on the original Bodyguard is the same cut as the Bodyguard 2.0. So today, we're going to mount the Pebble up on the original Bodyguard and see if we can make this gun not suck. Who the f*** am I kidding? This gun is still going to suck. It might just suck a little less. We're at the Crawford County Sportsman's Club, and the first thing we got to do is get this Optic sighted in. I have not shot any rounds through this gun since I put the Optic on it. Now, as far as the ammo goes that we're just using some 100 grain Freedom Munitions 380. I got a ton of this ammo. I figured we might as well just burn it up. Now, normally when I'm sighting in a pistol dot, I'll start out at about 10 or 15 yards to get it zeroed. But 10 yards with the Bodyguard 380, that's kind of pushing it. This gun is not very accurate. It's got a horrible trigger in it. So we're going to go ahead and do our initial zero at 7 yards. Now I got a USPSA target out here in front of me, as you can see. So let's fire a couple shots, see where our impact is. We'll get it sighted in, and then we'll shoot some groups with it. All right, we got our Gideon Optics Pebble out of the box, and if you want to see everything that comes in the box, I'm going to bring a picture up on the screen. And this Optic does not have a footprint. This doesn't have the RMSC footprint. I'm going to show you how this mounts in a second. The weight on this is only 0.84 ounces, and it's got a super low deck height of 7.5 millimeters, and it does have a backup iron sight built in. Now you can get this in two versions. They have a green dot version and a red dot version. I went with the green version, and this thing is super bright. All of Gideon Optics green emitters are really, really bright, and this is a 3 MOA green dot. It does have 10 brightness settings. You've got 8 daytime settings and 2 NV. Now this does run on a CR1632 battery. It is a side load battery, which is awesome, but they have nothing on the website about the battery life on this. But this does have shake awake. It will shut off after 225 seconds of not moving, and we are going to test that to make sure it works towards the end of the video. If you look over here on this side, you got your plus and your minus to adjust your brightness level up and down. Now let's talk about our windage and elevation adjustments. These are 1 MOA per click, and you have 35 MOA of total travel on the windage and on the elevation. And one other really cool thing that I like that they're doing with this does not have your standard flathead adjustment screw on it. This is actually using a Torx wrench. So let's check our elevation first. I like to do this in every video to see if the clicks are tactile and audible, and they are not. they're actually just smooth turning. I don't know if that has something to do with the way this dot is built. Let's check the windage. Same here. They're not extremely loose, but they are smooth, so there is no tactile click and there is no audible click. But if you look here at the top, you do have a U with an arrow pointing that direction for up, and on the side, we've got our R with our arrow pointing up. So now let's talk about what makes this optic so unique. This is your mount. And if you have the Bodyguard 2.0, you are going to have to remove the rear sight. And if you look, you've got two female lugs popping up here off the top of your sight adapter. You flip the dot upside down, this is going to drop in here like this. This is what your optic is going to mount to after you install this on your slide. And it does come with two screws to tighten it down. And being that this is so small and only going on a 380, and the screws are very tiny, you do not want to go over 12 inch-pounds on your torque wrench when you mount this up. Now, I have not shot any rounds through this yet. Let's see where our first impact is. Our elevation's actually pretty good. We're just a little to the right, so we got to move it a little left and just a little bit up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on safety, and we're going to make an adjustment. So we got to go left, and we got to go up, but not much. All right, let's see where we hit now. Windage is perfect. Elevation went a little too high. Here we go. Six rounds goes pretty fast. I'll take you down and show you the target. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at this target. This was our first shot, just a little bit low and to the right. I adjusted the dot up and to the left, and that was our next shot. That was a little too high. And then I put the zero about right here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shots. They're all in the A zone, but we're talking about a 4-inch group at 7 yards. We're in the A zone, but still nothing to brag about. All right, so I want to show you guys what I'm working with here. So the original Bodyguard 380 came out in 2010. That's right about the time I got this gun. And as you can see, without a mag in here, I can just barely get 2 fingers on this gun. Now, shortly after I bought this gun, I got on eBay and there was a guy on there making these extensions for the factory 6-round mags. And with that extension, I can actually get a full grip on it. Now I'm going to show you this gun is clear, no mag, nothing in the chamber. Throughout this video, you hear me talking about how bad the trigger is. Well, the trigger on this was rated right at about 10 pounds. It's double action only. It's basically an internal hammer-fired gun. Now, I personally think the trigger in this is quite a bit heavier than 10 pounds, but my trigger pull scale only goes up to 8 pounds, so there's no way I can get you guys an accurate trigger read off of this. Now, as far as the trigger goes, you've got a little bit of take up there, and you start to pull, and it finally breaks. Now the reset on this is just as horrendous as the trigger pull weight. So you start going out, right there you hear a click. Well, guess what? That's not the reset. You got to go all the way out to there and then pull again. So you got a lot working against you with this gun, including the size and the trigger. And then to top that off, this only has a little 2.75 inch barrel. All right, this is probably going to be an absolute show. But what we're going to do now is shoot 6-shot groups. Let's just see how it does. We're going to go to the top left first. Wow. That was bad. We actually had a bullseye, but it's literally like a 7-inch group. We got to be able to do better than that. All right, here we go with group number 2. Let's see if we can get a little better. Either this ammo is really crappy or this gun is giving me light primer strikes, because I actually just sent this gun back to Smith & Wesson to have some repairs done on it. We'll talk about that in another video. That group was a little better. It's still absolutely horrible, but they're all in the black. So we're going in the right direction with this gun. All right, I'm loading up some mags here. Now this ammo is really old. I actually got it from a customer of mine, and I have no idea how old it was when I got it. I've had this ammo for a little over 2 years now. Freedom Munitions is kind of hit and miss, so I don't want to blame the gun, but I wished I would have brought some better 380 ammo with me, because this is all I brought out. But I didn't want to waste my good 380 ammo on such a stupid video. All right, our third group, bottom left. I'm gonna really take my time on this one. Another light strike. Ooh, bullseye. Okay, I think we put 2 in the same hole. Got 2 bullseyes and the other 4 in the black. So each group's getting a little better. Now let's talk about what it takes to make this pebble fit on this gun. You're gonna knock the rear sight out of this gun, whether you use a sight pusher or a hammer and a punch, and then you're going to install the Gideon Optics adapter. So that basically slides right in that cut where you just took out your sight. You will probably have to sand on it a little bit to get it to go in, but you have to do that even if you use it for what it's intended for, the Bodyguard 2.0. But after I did that, that's when I ran into a problem. Because if you look at the back of this optic, it's made to fit flush on the Bodyguard 2.0. But if you look at the back of the slide on the original Bodyguard, this actually tapers up. So you've got a hump right there. So this optic right out of the box would not fit this gun. I'm going to bring a couple pictures up on the screen and show you what I had to do to make this fit. So now if this project wasn't dumb enough, I actually had to remove material from the actual optic and round out the back, as you can see in these pictures, to make it fit flush on this gun. So basically all I did is I went in there with a Dremel and rounded the back of the optic out to match the slide on this Bodyguard. And then I went in with a fine file and cleaned that all up, and then I sanded it a little bit, and then I put a coat of black paint on it. All right, this is probably going to be really ugly. Now I'm back at my normal distance of about 15 yards. I've got 2 steel targets set out on the ends. We're going to put 2 shots on a steel target, transition to the next one, and then go back to the other one. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to hit the steel. Oh, 2 in a row. Oh, had a miss. Okay. We were 5 for 6. All right, let's try that again. Six for 6. How about that? At 15 yards with a Bodyguard 380. Not too bad. All right, let's get into my final thoughts on this Gideon Optics Pebble. And when it comes to pros and cons, there's really no cons, other than the fact that this optic is incredibly small. And that means it has an incredibly small window. But this optic was intentionally made like that to fit the very slim Bodyguard 2.0. Now I have the green dot version of this. I do believe there's also a red dot version. I prefer green over red. And I will say this optic is extremely bright, and even turned all the way up on the brightest setting, I'm getting very little starbursting. Now, I know this is also going to come up. People out there are going to say, well, Veridian already made a dot that fits directly to the Bodyguard 2.0. And you would be correct. But that dot is nowhere near as good as this optic. And the reason I say that is because the Veridian version has auto brightness. So the dot is going to adjust to the environment that you're in. You don't get to make that call. With this, you got the buttons on the side to manually adjust your brightness up and down. The other drawback with the Viridian is that it is a bottom load battery, which means every time that battery goes dead, you're going to have to pull that optic off the gun, put a new battery in, and then you're probably going to have to re-zero the optic. But you don't have to do that with the Pebble because it has a side load battery. Now, I know this video ran a little long, but I actually really enjoyed making this video, and I had a really great time making this optic fit on this Bodyguard 380. And it's going to stay on here. And if I actually had the Bodyguard 2.0, I would definitely be getting another one of these optics to put on that. Because in all honesty, this gun was absolutely horrible, and I could barely hit the broadside of a barn with this thing. And even though it's still shooting horrible groups, it's shooting a lot better than it did with just the iron sights. Now, I know you guys saw me have a lot of light primer strikes in this video. I want to say that was ammo related, but I did have to send this gun back to Smith & Wesson, and I will tell you this, their customer service is amazing. And I'm actually going to do a separate video on that, and we'll dive deeper into why this gun is having light primer strikes. But other than that, this was an extremely fun project, probably one of the dumbest projects I've ever done, but fun nonetheless. And once I figure out these light primer strikes, hopefully just ammo related, I'll probably throw this in my pocket and carry it once in a while. So I really want to thank Gideon Optics for sending this out to the channel and letting me take a Dremel to a brand new optic to make it fit on a gun that it's not supposed to go on. And with that, I'm out of here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.